All right, so I'm back here with the EOS 1013C. It's a really nice guitar for this style. It's got a lot of warmth to it. When you pluck out those chords, it doesn't sound too harsh, and when you add the bass lines, it sounds like it's made for this type of music, and it's really a good one to play. What we're going to do now, rather than focus on the bass line and chords, we're just going to split it back, strip it back to just two notes. And you might think, well, that's a bit of a retrograde step, but it turns out to be very effective because you imply a lot of harmony. The notes that you get rid of in the middle are often just filled in the listener's imagination, and they create this illusion of being more going on than there really is. And so if you're only playing two notes, then it's easier to keep things moving along as well. So it's well worth spending a bit of time on this. So what are the two notes? Well, they are based on the interval of a third, which is very common in popular music. So you've got, in the key of C, for instance, you've got the note C here and the E. Those are a major third apart. So they form part of the C chord, right? But if I make that into a C minor, that becomes a minor third, that E becomes an E flat. And so you have something that's at the root of lots of popular music. So you hear that type of interval a lot. In this style, what we do is we drop the bass note down an octave. And so rather than being a third apart, they're a tenth apart. So you get 7 extra steps. And so that C up here becomes a bass note down here. So then you have a lot more space in between the two notes, and it just sounds more full. So all I'm doing, when you compare that to a C, a regular old C chord, I'm just playing the bottom and the top notes. But then if I make it a minor tenth, it has that sort of sad sound to it. But those two intervals, the major and the minor tenth, they're the foundation of all of the chords that you can break down just into two notes. So for instance, if I'm playing the 2-5-1 that we were talking about, with those big full chords, if I just break that down into tenths, it sounds a lot more sparse and stripped down, and it is, but it's still very musical, and it gives the listener more to think about. It also frees up some of your fingers to do other things with as well. Or get ready to do other things later on. So let's just focus on those tenths for a second. What a good exercise to do is to play a scale in tenths. So if I start down in the key of F, so I'm playing a major tenth, so I play all the way up there in terms of major and minor tenths. I'll write this out in full. Really, though, what I would do is use your ears to guide you as to, when you're playing it. In fact, let me just try to play it incorrectly. Well, it's not that hard for me to play it incorrectly. So instead of this being a minor tenth, let's make it a major tenth. So, that immediately that sounds wrong. So if you just go around the fretboard and find those intervals, where you have the bass note on the 6th string, that's basically, I ran out of space there. You can do the same thing on the 5th string. So I'm now playing a major tenth starting at B flat. And just work your way along, and then you can even move the bass further down onto the D string. And so you've got all of those tenths that are available to you over the fretboard. So it's really well worth spending time just identifying those. And I'll write a bunch of them out for you so that you'll have something to practice. But just if we just look at the intervals of the tenths around the 2-5-1. And I'm just moving the bass line around a bit. You can quickly just start to get a little pattern going that sounds a little bit more musical. Then you start applying it to tunes, to jazz standards in this particular case. And there's one tune that lends itself really well to it, and that's the standard All the Things You Are. Let me just play a few bars from it, because most of the intervals are major or minor tenths. So you've got major and minor tenths going along there. I'm adding a few notes in between, but let me just try to just stick to the major and minor tenths. And I'll write that out again, but that forms the basis of All the Things You Are. So we're going to go ahead and expand this now and think about what we call inner lines. And those are lines that go in between the interval of the tenths. And so because you're only playing two notes, you've got two other fingers that can be doing things, and they can be starting to play some of those inner lines. And so if you've got a pattern, you can just have a little roll down there. And you can just add a single note in just to sort of fill things out. So you get the general idea that we're just trying to keep the scaffolding of the tenths themselves and just add little lines in between. Sure. So you then, once you have that little structure going on, then you can just in the spaces between the sort of the downbeats of the chord, you can add little lines going on, and you can, if your fingers are in the right place, you can keep the bass note pressed down, or you can have the tenth pressed down. You might have to move fingers around to accommodate for where you are. And that's another thing that's worth noting about this style, is that there's no sort of right or wrong fingering. I can play a tenth with these two fingers or with this finger. It's just whatever finger happens to be nearest at hand. If you're in a particular situation. So really just think, once you start to map the fretboard out with these tenths, you'll find fingerings that work best for you, but just try different ones as you go along.